The October wind cut through my jacket as I gripped Sophie's small hand tighter on the leaf-strewn sidewalk of our quiet Chicago suburb. "Mommy, this house looks spooky, but in a good way," she whispered, her witch cape fluttering while her plastic pumpkin bucket swung at her side. I forced a laugh and stepped up the porch steps, never expecting that the simple knock on this random door would rip open every scar I had buried for 7 long years. The door creaked open and there she stood, Mia, holding a bowl of candy, her face frozen in the same stunned expression that must have mirrored mine. Time stopped. Her auburn hair was shorter now, framing those green eyes that once looked at me like I was the only person in the world. "Marissa," she breathed my name like a prayer and a curse all at once. Sophie tugged my hand. "Can we get candy, Mommy?" The little voice broke the spell, but not the earthquake inside my chest. I managed a nod and watched Mia drop a handful of chocolate bars into the bucket, her fingers trembling just like mine. "Come inside for a minute," she said softly, her voice cracking. "It is cold out there." And I could not move. Memories flooded back: college dorms, stolen kisses, late-night promises. And then the phone call from my mother that shattered everything. I had not seen Mia since the day I told her we were over, because my family would disown me if I did not end it. Now here she was standing in the doorway of a house I never knew she lived in, handing out candy like any normal neighbor, while my world tilted on its axis. Sophie looked up at her with wide eyes. "You have the best decorations, lady." Mia smiled down at her, the kind of warm smile that used to melt me, and said, "Thank you, sweetheart. I love your costume too." I finally found my voice. "We should go," but Mia stepped aside, the invitation clear in her eyes. "Just for a minute, Marissa, please." I stepped inside, the warmth of her living room hitting me like a wave, the scent of cinnamon candles, and something unmistakably her. Sophie ran to the bowl of candy on the coffee table, oblivious to the tension thick enough to choke on. I stood there staring at the woman I had loved more than anything, the woman my parents had forced me to abandon, because loving another woman was a sin they could not tolerate in their perfect Catholic family. "How have you been?" Mia asked, closing the door behind us, her eyes searching mine like she was afraid I would disappear again. "Divorced, single mom, trying to make it work," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. She nodded slowly, her expression softening with understanding that only someone who knew my family's control could have. "I never stopped thinking about you, Marissa." The words hung there heavy and dangerous, and I felt the old panic rise, the fear that if I let her in even for a second, my carefully rebuilt life would crumble. Sophie giggled from the floor, unwrapping a candy bar, and for a moment it felt almost normal, almost like the family I had always dreamed of with Mia instead of the man my parents pushed me toward. But normal was a lie. My mother still called every week, reminding me of the sacrifices I made, the marriage to Mark that produced Sophie, and the divorce that left me isolated but safe from their judgment. Safe until now. Mia reached out her hand, stopping just short of touching my arm, and I felt the electricity jump across the space between us, the same pull that had defined us in college before everything went wrong. "I should not be here," I whispered, but my feet would not move. Sophie looked up. "Mommy, can we stay a little longer? She loves the decorations." Mia smiled again, that smile that broke my heart all over again. And I knew in that instant that the door had not just opened to a house, it had opened to every choice I had ever run from. The night stretched ahead, full of questions I was terrified to answer. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same after this Halloween knock. Mia poured 2 cups of coffee in her small kitchen while Sophie sat at the table coloring on a pad. She had pulled from her bag the kind of easy distraction only a 6-year-old could manage in the middle of an adult storm. I watched Mia's hands move the same graceful way they had when we were 20 and sneaking around campus pretending our love was invincible. "How long have you lived here?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. 3 years, she replied, sliding a mug toward me. "Black, just like you like it." The detail hit me hard. She remembered everything. I wrapped my fingers around the warm ceramic, trying to ground myself, while the past rushed in like a tide. College had been our world: late nights in the library, whispering secrets under blankets, in my dorm room planning a future where we did not have to hide. Then my parents found the letters, the photos, the proof that their daughter was not the good girl they raised. The ultimatum came swift and brutal: either end it or lose everything, your tuition, your home, your family. I chose them because at 22 the fear of being alone in the world was bigger than the love I had for Mia. I told her it was over in a parking lot behind the dorms, tears streaming while she begged me to fight. I did not fight. I went home that summer, met Mark at church, the nice boy my mother introduced, and married him 2 years later to seal the deal. Sophie was the only good thing that came from that lie of a marriage, but even she could not erase the hole Mia left behind. You look good, Marissa, Mia said, sitting across from me, her eyes tracing my face like she was memorizing it again. Divorce suits you better than marriage ever did. I laughed bitterly, a short sound that surprised me. It was hell getting out, but worth it. Mark was never cruel, just absent, and the family kept pushing us to stay together for appearances. When I finally filed, they acted like I had betrayed them all over again. Sophie glanced up from her drawing. Mommy, why do you look sad? I forced a smile. I'm not sad, baby, just thinking about old friends. Mia leaned forward, her voice low so only I could hear. I tried to find you after graduation, but your family had you locked down. I wrote letters, they all came back returned to sender. The pain in her voice mirrored my own guilt, the kind that had kept me awake for years wondering what if I sacrificed us for their approval. And what did I get? A broken marriage, a strained relationship with my parents who still watched my every move, and a daughter who deserved a mother who was not carrying this much regret. Why now, Mia? I asked. Why this house? Why tonight? She shrugged, a small smile playing on her lips. I bought it last year after my promotion at the hospital. Pediatrics. I help kids like Sophie every day. The coincidence felt too perfect, like the universe was laughing at me for thinking I could outrun my past. We talked for over an hour, the conversation flowing from safe topics to dangerous ones, the years we missed, the people we became. She had dated a few women but nothing serious, always comparing them to what we had. I admitted the same, my marriage had been a performance, and the divorce left me wary of letting anyone close again. Sophie yawned, rubbing her eyes, and I knew we had to leave, but leaving felt impossible. Mia walked us to the door, her hand brushing mine as she handed Sophie one last piece of candy. Promise me you will come back, Marissa, she whispered. Not as a trick or treat, but as you. I nodded without promising anything, the weight of my family's expectations pressing down harder than ever. Driving home with Sophie chattering about her candy haul in the back seat, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Mia was back, and with her came every question I had buried, the moral battle between the daughter my parents demanded and the woman I had always been. That night, after tucking Sophie in, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at my phone, MIA's number saved from when she slipped me a note before we left. One text could change everything or destroy the fragile peace I had built. The choice felt impossible, and the clock was ticking because secrets like this never stayed hidden for long in my family. The text came at midnight. Just checking if you got home safe. 3 simple words from Mia, but they lit a fire in my chest that I could not extinguish. I stared at the screen for 20 minutes before typing back, yes, thanks for the candy, Sophie loved it. The reply was instant, I loved seeing you both. Can we talk tomorrow? I did not answer right away. Instead, I lay awake replaying every moment on her porch, the way her eyes softened when she looked at Sophie, the way my body still remembered her touch even after all these years. Morning brought reality, Sophie bouncing into my room demanding pancakes and cartoons while I scrambled to get us both ready for the day. At the daycare drop-off, I kissed her forehead and drove to work, my mind a whirlwind. By lunch, I had caved and agreed to meet Mia at a small park near my office, neutral ground. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench with 2 coffees, the steam rising in the crisp air. You came, she said, standing up, her smile tentative. I could not stay away, I admitted, taking the cup and sitting beside her, our knees almost touching. The conversation picked up where it left off last night, but now without Sophie as a buffer it turned deeper. She told me about the years after our breakup, how she threw herself into medical school to forget the pain, how she came out fully to her own supportive family, who had welcomed the news with open arms. The contrast stung. My parents still pretended my college phase was just a mistake, a phase I had outgrown by marrying Mark. They never knew the real reason for the divorce, only that I was too independent now. Mia reached over and took my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my skin, the gesture so familiar it hurt. You do not have to keep carrying their expectations, Marissa. You have Sophie to think about, but you also have yourself. Her words cracked something open inside me, the internal war I had fought since the day I left her, the guilt of betraying my true self to keep my family's love. But love should not come with conditions, she continued, her voice passionate. I sacrificed us once because I was scared, now I see what that cost us both. I pulled my hand back, afraid of how right she felt, how easy it would be to fall again. What about Sophie? I whispered. If my parents find out, they will make my life hell, maybe even try for custody, claiming I'm unfit. The fear was real. My mother had hinted at it during the divorce proceedings, the subtle threats about my past. Mia nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes. I would never ask you to risk her. But hiding forever is not living either. We walked through the park, the leaves crunching under our feet, talking about everything and nothing, the dreams we once shared, the ones we let die. By the time I had to head back to work, my resolve was crumbling, the pull toward her stronger than the walls I had built. That evening my phone rang, my mother's number on the screen. I answered, bracing myself. How was Halloween? She asked, her tone light but probing. Sophie had fun, I said, keeping it vague. Did you meet anyone interesting? The question hung like a trap, and I froze, wondering if she already knew. Just neighbors, I lied, the word tasting like ash. After hanging up, I felt the familiar pressure closing in, the societal judgment that labeled my love as wrong, the family loyalty that demanded I stay in their mold. Mia texted again, that was nice today. I want more time with you. I stared at the message, my heart racing with possibility and terror. The moral dilemma gnawed at me. Was it selfish to want happiness with Mia, or selfish to deny Sophie a mother who was whole? That night I dreamed of college, us laughing under the stars, only to wake to the reality that choosing her meant facing the family who had already forced me to betray her once. The tension built with every passing hour, the decision looming like a storm on the horizon. The betrayal came on a Tuesday. I had seen Mia 3 more times, secret coffee dates, stolen hours in the park where we talked and laughed and let old feelings breathe without crossing any lines. Sophie asked about the nice lady from Halloween once, and I brushed it off as a friend, but the lie sat heavy. Then my sister Elena called, her voice tight. Mom knows Marissa. She saw your car near that house on Maple Street, the one with the big pumpkins. My stomach dropped. How? Elena sighed. Mrs. Ramirez from church mentioned it in passing at Bible study. You know how Mom is, she drove by to check. The confrontation happened that night at my parents' house, the same dining room where they had issued the ultimatum years ago. Mom sat at the head of the table, her face a mask of disappointment. We thought you learned your lesson, Marissa. Marrying Mark, fixing things. Now this again with that woman. Dad stayed silent, arms crossed, the quiet disapproval worse than any yelling. I defended myself. It's not like that, we are just talking, but the words sounded weak even to me. Elena, who I had confided in once about the divorce, looked away, her silence the real betrayal. She had promised to keep my secrets, but family loyalty ran deeper than sisterly bonds in our world. You will end this immediately, Mom declared, or we will have to rethink how involved we are with Sophie. The threat landed like a punch, the fear for my daughter paralyzing me. I left their house shaking, drove straight to MIA's without thinking. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. What happened? I told her everything, the spying, the ultimatum, the way my own sister had fed them information. MIA's face hardened with anger, but her arms around me were gentle. This is exactly what they did before, she said softly. They weaponize your love for them against you. We sat on her couch, my head on her shoulder, the closeness feeling both right and terrifying. She shared her own pain, the letters she sent that my family intercepted, the nights she cried wondering why I chose them over us. I never betrayed you, Marissa, she whispered. But they made you betray yourself. The confrontation with my past reached its peak when my mother called while I was still there. I answered on speaker so Mia could hear. End it or Sophie stays with us until you come to your senses. The cruelty stunned me. Mia took the phone, her voice calm, but firm. This is not your decision, Mrs. Torres. Marissa is an adult and a good mother. Click. The line went dead. In the silence that followed, I felt the awakening stir, the realization that my family's love had always been conditional, while MIA's had been unconditional even after I broke her heart. But the cost was high. Sophie's innocent face flashed in my mind, the whispers at church, the judgment from neighbors who still saw same-sex love as a flaw. Mia held me while I cried, the trade-off, clear happiness with her meant losing the family safety net, the approval I had clung to for so long. That night we did not kiss, we simply held each other, the emotional intimacy deeper than any physical act, the decision hanging between us like a sword. I left at dawn promising to think, but knowing the clock was running out because secrets had a way of exploding, and when they did, the pieces would cut everyone involved. The crisis hit on a Friday afternoon. Sophie had a school play rehearsal, and I picked her up early only to find my mother waiting in the parking lot, her car parked beside mine like an ambush. We need to talk, she said, grabbing my arm. Not here, I hissed, glancing at Sophie, who was waving goodbye to friends. At home then. Back at my apartment, the argument escalated fast. Your sister told me everything Mom said, pacing the living room. You are seeing that woman again, putting ideas in Sophie's head. I stood my ground for the first time in years. Sophie does not know anything, and even if she did, my life is not yours to control. The words felt liberating, but the backlash was immediate. Then we will go to court, she threatened. We have the resources and the church community behind us. You think a judge will side with a mother who chooses sin over stability? The moral dilemma tore at me, right and wrong blurred by years of conditioning. Was protecting Sophie by staying away from Mia the right choice, or was teaching her to live authentically the greater good? Mia called later that evening, her voice urgent. I heard from a friend at the hospital your mom is asking around about custody lawyers. The panic set in full force. I met Mia at a quiet diner on the edge of town, Sophie asleep at a friend's house for a sleepover. We sat in a corner booth, hands linked under the table, the romantic tension simmering but overshadowed by fear. I cannot lose her, I whispered. Mia squeezed my hand. You will not. We will fight this together if you let me in. The offer was everything I had dreamed of, but the price tag was written in my family's disapproval, the societal stares, the potential loss of support that kept me afloat as a single mom. Flashbacks hit hard the day I told Mia we were done, the pain in her eyes mirroring what I saw now in myself. I betrayed her once for them, now betraying them for her felt like the only path to redemption, but doubt lingered. What if I was wrong? What if Sophie suffered because of my choices? We talked for hours, weighing every angle, the betrayals that started with my family intercepting letters, the trade-offs I made marrying Mark, the awakening that came too late. By closing time I knew I could not go back. The pull toward Mia was the truth I had denied too long. Driving home I called Elena, confronting her directly. How could you? Her voice broke. I thought I was protecting you, sis. The family is all we have. But you are wrong, I said, hanging up, the tears flowing. The confrontation with my parents came the next morning at their house, Sophie safely at daycare. I walked in head high and told them I was done hiding. Mia is part of my life now, and if you cannot accept that, you lose us both. The room erupted, Dad shouting, Mom crying, the drama peaking in accusations of selfishness and ingratitude. I left with my heart pounding but lighter, the cost paid in severed ties, but the gain in honesty priceless. That evening Mia came over, Sophie meeting her properly this time, the three of us sharing pizza like a real family, the moment beautiful and fragile. But the social backlash started immediately, whispers at work, sidelong glances from neighbors, the prejudice I had feared now real. Still holding Mia's hand while Sophie slept, I felt the awakening complete. I had chosen love over fear, and the price, though steep, was worth every tear. Weeks blurred into a new normal, Mia becoming a steady presence in our lives, helping with Sophie after school, sharing quiet dinners where laughter replaced the old silence. My family kept their distance, the threats of custody fading once they realized I had documentation of my stable life and a lawyer on speed dial. The societal pressure remained, the church friends who stopped calling, the neighbors who suddenly had nothing to say, but I stood taller knowing I was living my truth. Sophie adored Mia, asking questions about why she made her smile so big, the innocence a reminder of why the fight mattered. One evening as we walked through the same park where Mia and I had reconnected, Sophie ran ahead chasing leaves, and Mia pulled me close, our first real kiss since college, soft and full of years of longing. The romance bloomed, careful and deep, no rush, just the steady rebuilding of what was stolen from us. But the internal scars lingered, nights when I questioned if the damage to family bonds was permanent, the moral weight of choosing myself over their expectations. Mia held me through the doubts, reminding me that real love does not demand erasure. The final confrontation came at Thanksgiving. My mother showed up unannounced at my door, her face lined with regret. We miss Sophie, she said quietly. And you? I let her in the conversation, raw and honest for the first time. She admitted the fear that drove their actions, the generational beliefs they clung to, the regret of losing me once before. It is not easy for us, she whispered, but we want to try. The olive branch was tentative, the road to acceptance long, but it was a start. Mia joined us later, the four of us at the table, the tension thick yet hopeful, Sophie chattering happily, unaware of the history. Watching them I saw the full circle, the sacrifices, the betrayals, and the awakening that led me here. Life was not perfect, the prejudice lingered, the family healing slow. But the joy in Mia's eyes and Sophie's laughter made every hard choice worthwhile. As the year turned I stood on Mia's porch again, this time not as a trick-or-treater, but as someone who had finally come home. The story of us was not over, it was just beginning, forged in fire and truth. In the end, after all the pain and growth, one question remains: did Marissa do the right thing by finally choosing her own heart over the family that demanded she break it? Or was the price of that freedom too high for a mother to pay?